At 5:22 in the morning, long before the ribbon-cutting ceremony and the arrival of smiling diplomats, Captain Ibrahim Traoré stepped quietly into a construction depot on the outskirts of Ouagadougou. Rows of brand-new bulldozers, excavators, and dump trucks gleamed under the first light of dawn. On their sides were painted the words, "Donated by the Global Infrastructure Development Initiative," a message that seemed to promise progress, partnership, and a brighter future. Yet Traoré was not there to celebrate. He was there because one technician had noticed something no one else had. The machines were consuming more power than their engines required, even when sitting idle. That anomaly, dismissed by supervisors as a calibration issue, had been taken seriously by Moussa Compaoré. He had spent 15 years repairing engines and trusted his instincts more than official explanations. His suspicion would soon reveal that what looked like generosity was something far more dangerous. In another 6 hours, the world's media would have gathered to watch these 26 vehicles break ground on new roads and bridges, symbols of foreign assistance. Instead, those same cameras would record a revelation that shocked diplomats and rattled intelligence agencies from Washington to Beijing. What had been presented as a gift was in fact a weapon of a different kind. Hidden deep within the frames and electrical systems of those shiny yellow machines was one of the most advanced surveillance networks ever attempted in Africa. This story is not only about Burkina Faso. It is about how easily sovereignty can be stolen under the mask of development. It is about how modern colonialism now arrives not with soldiers, but with steel and electronics disguised as aid. And it is about how vigilance, even from one ordinary man with a simple meter, can protect a nation's dignity. As you listen, reflect on this question. If a single bolt on a bulldozer can conceal a microphone, how much do we really know about the technology we welcome into our homes, schools, and hospitals? The answer may change how we view aid, partnership, and trust itself. The chain of events began with a simple observation. Moussa Compaoré, a veteran technician with 15 years of experience in heavy machinery, noticed that one of the new excavators was consuming more fuel than expected while idle. He trusted his instincts. Late at night, after the depot was quiet and only a few guards remained, he began tracing the irregular draw of electricity with his tools. What he discovered was chilling. Behind a panel that should have been empty, welded shut to appear solid, he uncovered a hidden black box about the size of a laptop. It had no serial number, no label, and no explanation for its presence. Wires extended from the box into the core of the vehicle's frame. Compaoré immediately understood that this was not a normal component. He took photographs with his phone and quietly contacted a family member working in military intelligence. Within an hour, a small team of specialists arrived at the depot. They moved cautiously between the rows of vehicles, avoiding attention, and began opening panels in several other machines. By dawn, they had confirmed the unthinkable. Every one of the 26 brand-new vehicles contained similar devices, each carefully concealed within the steel frames, each integrated into the electrical system, and each drawing power that no one had accounted for. Colonel Samuel Ouedraogo, head of military intelligence, examined the findings personally. He made a secure call to the president. "Mr. President, you need to see this yourself. Do not bring your regular security detail. Come only with the special unit." Those words told Captain Traoré everything he needed to know. This was not a minor concern. This was a potential national crisis. At 5:22 in the morning, Traoré walked into the depot. His face remained calm, but those who served under him recognized the storm behind his eyes. He ordered the site sealed at once. No one was to enter or leave. The ribbon-cutting ceremony scheduled for noon was quietly postponed. Foreign dignitaries already waiting in their hotels were told that a technical delay had occurred. Behind locked gates, Traoré and his closest advisors examined what Moussa Compare had found. Over the next 2 hours, his team dismantled sections of multiple vehicles. The more they uncovered, the more alarming the picture became. Each machine contained not just a single device, but an entire integrated system. There were GPS trackers precise enough to locate positions within centimeters. There were microphones capable of picking up conversations from 50 meters away. There were miniature cameras hidden inside hydraulic systems. There were transmitters designed to send data through satellite channels. Even environmental sensors had been embedded that could identify chemical compositions in the soil, effectively allowing the vehicles to map mineral deposits while they worked. Dr. Aminata Kabore, the country's leading cybersecurity expert, was called to the scene. She analyzed the components and delivered a blunt assessment. This is not an accident. This is a surveillance ecosystem. These vehicles can record our voices, track our movements, analyze our resources, and send everything back to foreign servers in real time. They were designed not to build our nation, but to strip it bare of secrets. The discovery grew darker when the team examined one of the storage units. It already contained recordings and data logs. Despite being presented as new and unused, the vehicles had been collecting information since they left the factory floor. The storage held hours of conversations from port workers, customs officers, and transport crews. One recording captured a security officer explaining troop rotations in the north. Another revealed customs procedures at a shipping terminal. These machines had been spying since the moment they were manufactured. When Traoré heard the audio with his own ears, his expression hardened. He understood the implications immediately. This was not the work of a single hostile country. The transmission systems were programmed to route information through commercial satellites to servers in multiple locations: Silicon Valley, London, and Beijing. This was a consortium of intelligence agencies and corporations operating under the mask of development assistance. For decades, Africa had received donations of equipment and aid with open hands, often grateful for any help to build infrastructure. Now the mask had slipped. What was presented as generosity was in fact espionage on a massive scale. Burkina Faso had nearly been tricked into hosting one of the most advanced surveillance networks in the world, hidden inside the very machines that were supposed to build its future. Traoré turned to his commanders. "Seal the evidence. No one must touch these vehicles without our approval. Prepare a full technical report, and be ready to show the world exactly what has been hidden inside these gifts." His voice was steady, but every person in that depot knew what this meant. The celebration planned for noon would not be a celebration at all. It would be something else entirely. The question remained: if construction vehicles could be turned into intelligence-gathering machines, how many other so-called donations across Africa were already spying in silence? By noon, the depot no longer felt like a construction site. It had been transformed into a stage for a global drama. Rows of gleaming machines stood in the background, while a large screen had been erected beside the podium. Journalists, foreign diplomats, and dignitaries filed in with polite smiles, expecting a celebration of international cooperation. The French ambassador, Philippe Moreau, shook hands confidently. The American Deputy Chief of Mission, James Patterson, exchanged small talk about development partnerships. The Chinese commercial attaché Liu posed for photographs beside the vehicles, convinced this would be another success story of generosity. Captain Ibrahim Traoré arrived precisely on time. Dressed in his military uniform, his face unreadable, he walked slowly to the podium. Cameras flashed, microphones pointed toward him, and the crowd quieted. Everyone expected the standard ceremonial speech about partnership and progress. Instead, what they received was a revelation that would shake capitals around the world. "Ladies and gentlemen," Traoré began, his voice steady and deliberate, "today was supposed to be a day of celebration." These 26 construction vehicles were presented as gifts to help build Burkina Faso's future. But before we celebrate, I must show you exactly what our generous donors have given us. He nodded to Dr. Aminata Kabore. The screen came to life with the image of a bulldozer. Then the picture zoomed in to show a hidden panel being removed. Behind it, the black box appeared. The crowd gasped. The next slide revealed GPS modules, microphones, and data transmitters. Another slide traced the flow of information from the vehicles to satellites, and finally to servers located in the United States, the United Kingdom, and China. The French ambassador stepped forward, his voice sharp. "This is absurd. These are ordinary electronic components used for efficiency." Traoré interrupted calmly. "Is that so?" He signaled again to Dr. Kabore, who played an audio file. The crowd froze as the unmistakable voice of the French ambassador filled the speakers. He was heard discussing with his intelligence attaché how to ensure that the vehicles would be deployed to sites of maximum strategic value. The ambassador's face drained of color. He stepped back, fumbling with his phone, no doubt trying to reach his embassy. Next, the screen displayed a recording of an encrypted call. This time, the voice belonged to James Patterson, the American deputy. In the recording, he explained to CIA headquarters that these vehicles would provide better intelligence than satellites. Patterson maintained his composure in public, but his jaw tightened. Every camera was pointed at him. The Chinese attaché Liu tried to slip quietly out of the crowd. Traoré stopped him with a sharp tone. "Mr. Liu, do you not wish to see what your country contributed?" The next slide revealed advanced surveillance modules with quantum encryption, clearly of Chinese origin. "You believed we could not crack them," Traoré said coldly. "You were wrong." The atmosphere shifted instantly. Journalists scribbled furiously. News cameras broadcast the scandal live across Africa, Europe, and America. What was supposed to be a story of partnership had turned into the unveiling of one of the most audacious espionage operations in modern history. But the most disturbing revelation was still to come. The vehicles had already been collecting information since leaving the factory. The screen displayed maps filled with data points. Recordings from Moroccan ports, Algerian customs offices, and Niger's security checkpoints appeared in sequence. Conversations about troop deployments, security weaknesses, and mineral sites had all been captured. Representatives from those countries, who had come only to observe the ceremony, were now on their phones warning their governments. As the weight of the evidence pressed down on the crowd, Traoré's voice grew firmer. These machines were not gifts. They were weapons designed to invade our sovereignty while pretending to build our future. They would have mapped our resources, recorded our leaders, and monitored our people. But instead of building our nation, they would have built a chain around our independence. The crowd erupted in murmurs, some angry, some fearful. Diplomats shifted uncomfortably, their faces betraying panic. Local citizens who had come expecting to witness international generosity now stared with disbelief at what was unfolding. The image of generosity had been replaced by the reality of surveillance. Traoré paused, letting silence settle over the audience. His words cut through the tension. To our partners who provided these machines, I have one message. We are keeping them, not as construction equipment, but as evidence. Some will be preserved in our museums so future generations will see how modern colonialism operates. Some will go to international courts, and some will be studied by our engineers so we can defeat any future attempts at this betrayal. The crowd of citizens broke into applause. For them, it was not just a revelation of espionage, but a declaration of defiance. Burkina Faso would not bow quietly. Yet this was only the beginning. If construction equipment could be turned into mobile spy platforms, what other gifts and donations across Africa were hiding secrets waiting to be exposed? The revelation at the depot sent shockwaves far beyond Burkina Faso's borders. Within hours, the footage of Traoré's speech and the evidence displayed on the screen was being replayed on television stations across Africa and reported by major news outlets in Europe and the United States. The reaction was swift and dramatic. What had been uncovered was not simply an attempt to spy on one country. It was the exposure of a strategy that could have compromised the entire continent. In Ouagadougou, citizens gathered in markets, cafes, and churches to watch the broadcasts. Many had come expecting to celebrate new roads and bridges that would make their lives easier. Instead, they were confronted with the reality that those same machines had been designed to record their conversations, track their movements, and map their resources. Anger spread quickly. People felt deceived, not only by the foreign governments involved, but also by the global system that had dressed exploitation in the clothing of generosity. Mothers who thought their children would soon attend better schools asked how many classrooms had already been bugged by so-called donations. Farmers who dreamed of easier access to markets wondered how many harvests had been measured and catalogued for foreign corporations. Politically, the impact was even more severe. Traoré moved quickly. Within 24 hours, his government announced the expulsion of multiple diplomats identified as intelligence officers. Assets belonging to the implicated corporations were frozen. A new agency dedicated to technological sovereignty was established, with Moussa Compare appointed to lead the first unit. This decision symbolized a new philosophy. Burkina Faso would not wait for foreign experts to protect its sovereignty. It would train its own people, beginning with the mechanic who had noticed the anomaly. Across Africa, the domino effect began almost immediately. Nigeria conducted inspections of water purification systems it had received as aid and found hidden transmitters. Kenya checked medical devices in hospitals and uncovered microphones. Ghana investigated donated school computers and discovered embedded spyware. Each new discovery confirmed that what had been exposed in Ouagadougou was part of a much larger pattern. The sense of betrayal was continental. At the African Union headquarters in Addis Ababa, emergency meetings were called. Leaders debated how to respond. Some urged caution, fearing economic retaliation from powerful countries. Others insisted that the only path forward was to unite around a doctrine of vigilance. By the end of the week, the African Union declared that all foreign equipment donations would now be subject to full inspection. This was more than a policy change. It was a statement of intent that Africa would no longer accept black boxes delivered with smiles. Inside Burkina Faso, the revelation altered the relationship between government and citizens. Many who had doubted Traoré's leadership began to see him differently. He was no longer just a young officer who had seized power. He was the leader who had looked inside a gift and dared to expose the truth to the world. His approval rating soared. Families spoke about him at dinner tables with pride, comparing him to Thomas Sankara, another leader who had warned against hidden forms of colonialism. The narrative of sovereignty and vigilance began to shape national identity. The economic cost was real. Several aid programs were suspended, and investment from certain Western corporations slowed. But the people of Burkina Faso viewed this not as a loss, but as a trade-off. Better to have fewer projects and maintain sovereignty than to accept development that secretly recorded their lives. Markets adjusted. Local entrepreneurs began discussing how to design and build equipment domestically. Universities created new programs in engineering and cybersecurity. What had begun as a scandal was becoming a catalyst for innovation. On the streets, art and music carried the story forward. Graffiti appeared, depicting bulldozers with eyes painted on their sides. Singers composed ballads about Trojan gifts and false friends. In classrooms, teachers told children about the spy dozers and reminded them that vigilance was a form of patriotism. This cultural response turned a political crisis into a movement of awareness that reached into every home. Traoré himself framed the event as a moral turning point. In a follow-up address, he told his people, "They smiled while they spied. They gave while they took. They built while they bugged. But from today forward, we will build with our own hands, and what we build will serve only us." His words resonated not only in Burkina Faso, but across Africa. The question that hung in the air was not only how Africa would respond internally, but also how the United States and other global powers would react to being caught. Would they deny, retaliate, or attempt to redefine their partnerships? The answer would soon come, and it would shape the next chapter of this confrontation. The revelations from Ouagadougou triggered immediate reactions in world capitals. In Washington, officials at the State Department initially tried to dismiss the evidence as a misunderstanding. They argued that the technology embedded in the construction vehicles was meant for operational efficiency and safety. Yet the audio recordings of a senior American diplomat discussing intelligence value could not be explained away. The credibility of the United States was shaken. For decades, American aid programs had been presented as symbols of goodwill. Now they were seen as instruments of surveillance. In London, the scandal exposed the role of Prometheus Defense Systems, a company with deep ties to the British intelligence community. Lawmakers demanded an inquiry after stock prices collapsed. In Paris, the government scrambled to contain the embarrassment caused by Bridges for Africa, the NGO that had acted as a cover for French intelligence. Officials feared a wave of anti-French protests across West Africa, where suspicion of Paris was already high. China also faced its share of damage. Harmony Construction, the state-owned enterprise that had built the vehicles, was accused of embedding quantum-encrypted devices that recorded sensitive information. Beijing responded with silence at first, then accused Western media of exaggeration. Yet the proof displayed in Ouagadougou was undeniable. For many Africans, the scandal confirmed that both East and West were competing for influence with the same deceptive tools. Beyond accusations, the political consequences deepened. The African Union called for the creation of a new legal framework to protect technological sovereignty. Regional leaders argued that if international law could not defend them from espionage disguised as charity, then Africa must build its own system of accountability. Within days, several governments announced joint efforts to inspect all foreign equipment already in use. For the United States, the scandal was more than an embarrassment. It threatened long-term strategic interests in the Sahel, a region already critical to counterterrorism operations. American analysts feared that growing distrust could push African nations closer to alternative partners, including Russia. Editorials in Washington warned that by treating aid as a cover for espionage, the United States had jeopardized its own credibility. The stage was set for a deeper question. Would the exposure of this surveillance network drive Africa into a new era of self-reliance? Or would powerful nations double down with new methods to maintain control? The scandal of the 26 vehicles left no doubt about the stakes. Sovereignty was not only about defending borders, it was about defending technology, information, and even the tools used to build daily life. Burkina Faso had narrowly avoided becoming an open book for foreign powers. The revelation had shown that modern colonialism does not always arrive with armies. Sometimes it arrives painted in bright colors, with ribbons and speeches about partnership. For the people of Burkina Faso, the lesson was sobering, but also empowering. Ordinary citizens saw how one technician's vigilance could protect an entire nation. Families began to speak of sovereignty not as an abstract word, but as something that touched their children's classrooms, their hospitals, their markets, and their homes. A farmer asked if tractors donated to his village might carry hidden devices. A mother wondered if school computers could record more than lessons. These questions were no longer signs of paranoia. They were signs of wisdom. The political impact spread across Africa and beyond. Nations once accustomed to accepting foreign aid with gratitude now demanded inspection and transparency. Regional leaders began drafting agreements that would allow no black boxes, no closed systems, and no unexplained technology. The scandal had shifted the balance. Trust was no longer given freely. It had to be earned. The deeper question remained: will Africa seize this moment to chart its own path of technological independence? Or will powerful nations invent new ways to reassert control? Will Burkina Faso's courage inspire a wave of vigilance? Or will the forces of exploitation adapt and strike again in subtler forms? As we consider these questions, let us remember the moral dimension. Scripture teaches that truth sets us free. In Ouagadougou that morning, the truth hidden in 26 machines was brought into the light. That light is what protects dignity, families, and the future of nations. If this story has stirred something in your heart, take a moment to reflect on what sovereignty means in your own life. If you believe in justice, dignity, and the right of people to live free from deception, let your voice be part of the conversation. Share your thoughts, inspire others to think, and pray for a world where generosity is real, where partnerships are honest, and where no hidden device can steal the future of a child. May God bless Burkina Faso. May God bless Africa. And may God bless all people who choose truth over lies, vigilance over complacency, and freedom over fear.